Good evening and namaste everyone. Welcome to our data center modeling webinar. I am Dr. Rimzhim Gupta, research scientist at Paanduv Applications. At Paanduv, I am handling computational modeling projects related to energy and environment. This may include chemical engineering projects and environmental related projects, wastewater treatment, battery thermal management, data center modeling, and many more. Paanduv Applications is a computational modeling-based consulting and R&D company. We are delivering successful projects since last 3 years. The solutions we have provided to our clients are actually being implemented in the industry at real time. For this webinar, we have received around 1200 registrations, and I welcome you all, whoever has able to join us live. This is going to be a live webinar, so you can post your questions in the chat box. My team or I will respond to the questions you have posted. So let's start with a simple quiz. Which of these 8 images do you think are the data centers? Let's take a 5 seconds pause and you can post your answers in the chat box. Well, these are all data centers. These are all data centers located at different geographical locations, but these are all at isolated places. For example, the first one is located in Stockholm. Under 100 feet granite rock, it is a nuclear bunker which is transformed into a data center. The second one is a yacht which is transformed into a data center, and this is floating in the ocean in California. The third one is the underwater data center, which is deployed by Microsoft. The fourth one is a data center, which is deployed by Facebook. It is located in Arctic Circle in Sweden. Fifth one is Google's paper mill data center. And the sixth one is a church, which is transformed into a data center. The seventh one is a mountain, which is located in China, which was hollowed up to provide a safe and secure location for a data center. Similarly, the eighth one is a mining site. This is also known as Lefdal Mine Data Center. This is going to be the biggest in Europe, and this is going to be having the smallest carbon footprint. So looking at all these images, we can say that data center market is opening up and it is growing widely and exponentially. There are some other evidences to this investment is Amazon has plans for 15 more availability zones in AWS region in Australia, India, Indonesia, Spain, and Switzerland. Oracle has opened its second cloud region in Brazil. Microsoft also has plans to open its first data center in New Zealand, which is going to deliver the enterprise grade cloud service. It is also opening its first data center in Malaysia. Google has also announced 4 new cloud regions in Jakarta, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, and Seoul. So these facts are enough to understand that data center investments are growing globally. But as a market explodes, there are certain pain points to every industry. In this particular industry for data centers, there are a couple of pain points which I'm going to describe here. These are high efficiency and performance of the data centers, lowering the energy consumption because data centers consume around 1% of the global energy, lowering the carbon footprint because data centers at the moment are generating 360 million tons of CO2 per year, lowering the cooling cost because it consumes around 40 to 50% of the overall expenditure that is made for the data centers. So we need something that can address all these pain points, and computational modeling with integration of artificial intelligence is a great way to look at it. and it can address all these four problems. In fact, Paanduv Applications has done it successfully, and we are going to peek into all these scenarios in our upcoming webinar. The solutions that Paanduv Applications is providing to these industries and to our clients are actually being implemented at real time. So I have structured this webinar in 6 compartments. Initially, we will know more about data center components and its architecture. Then I will move on towards the data center cooling strategies, and thereafter I will cover some of the case study which are relevant for computational modeling folks and which will demonstrate some of the real-time case studies on electrical room HVAC modeling. Thereafter, some environmental modeling related case study on large scale data farms. One of the most important and interesting part of the webinar, which is green approach for data centers, and some internal case study on that. And last but not the least, we will cover CFD with AI based expert system for data centers that is developed exclusively by Paanduv Applications. Now, starting with data center components, let's understand first how the data center architecture look like. This is a 3D representation of a data center. If I have a closer look on this, I can segregate this entire data center into 3 compartments or 3 components. The first one is power, through which it is delivering the power to data center components, which is UPS and generators. Second component is IT, which is information technology, which stores the data, which are the server racks lying in the middle region. Third one is cooling systems, which also consumes a lot of energy, but they are important and very necessary to run the data centers efficiently and smoothly. Now, going into the closer look of the data center server racks, these are right now lying around in a regular fashion, but I want to highlight the components which are there around this room, which are perforated tiles. Perforated tiles allow the colder air to move towards the servers. Similarly, the orange arrows seen here are the hot exhaust, which is going from the servers to the cooling unit. 2 cooling units are lying around here, which is also called crack. Now, as I discussed earlier, data center can be compartmentalized into 3 components, which is power, IT, and cooling equipments. Power contains the heart of the data center, which is from where the power is coming in, which is UPS and generators. Information technology includes the servers. If I see this slide in a computational modeling aspect, I can say that UPS and generators and servers are evolving some heat. So I can take them as energy sources or heat generation sources. Similarly, in the cooling equipment, which is also a very, very important part of a data center, there are a couple of units which are traditionally used. Air rotational unit, computer room air handler unit, which is also called CRA, computer room air conditioning unit, which is also called CRAC, which we had seen in the earlier slide, dry coolers for large scale cooling, fan coil assemblies, heat exchangers, and fans. These are some unit operations which are traditionally used in data centers. Data center also use some cooling mechanisms, which are air cooling, immersion cooling, which is also called direct liquid cooling, and multiple fluid cooling. The physics it captures is turbulence, bubble dynamics, and HVAC modeling. But here is one physics which ties them all together, which is conjugate heat transfer. Now, before proceeding further for any of the detailed information about the data center, we should first know some terminologies which defines the effectiveness of the data center. Power usage effectiveness, which is also called PUE, is a very important and quantitative factor which determines the energy efficiency of a data center. PUE, mathematically, it's the division of total facility power to IT equipment power. Total facility power is something which is given into the system, to the data center, which includes the switchgear, UPS, battery backup, chillers, and other computer room ACs. But IT equipment power is that power which is consumed by the IT equipments, which is servers, storage, and telco equipments. For example, if I'm giving the power of 850 kilowatt to my data center and I am taking in 500 kilowatt for the IT equipment, my PUE becomes 1.7. Similarly, if I reduce this incoming power to 730 and my IT power remains the same, which is 500 kilowatt, my PUE becomes 1.5, which is 10% lesser than the previous case. In this case, my second case is more favorable and is towards the greener side of the data center approach. Moving in towards the second section of the webinar, which is data center cooling strategy. The pie chart at the left-hand corner shows you that cooling already occupies 50% of the total energy which is given to the data center. That means it is a process which cannot be ignored and it should pay more attention towards it. Some traditional unit and some working principles of these units are in this slide. Air rotational unit, which is also acronymed as ARU. Computer room air handling unit, which is also known as CRAC units or CRA units. These are generally differentiates in the internal heat exchanger arrangement, as well as the major difference in these units come from the hot air inlet and cold air outlet locations. In ARU, the hot air goes in from the bottom of the ARU unit horizontally, and the cold air comes out from the top of the unit from 3 directions. Similarly, in case of CRAC and CRA units, the hot air goes in vertically from the top and cold air comes out vertically from the bottom. There is space in the bottom from where the cold air comes in. CRA and CRAC units differentiates themselves in terms of the usage of coolant. In CRAC units, refrigerants and a compressor is used, whereas in CRA units, chilled water is used to provide the cooling. Now, moving on to one more important strategy which generally data center folks use, which is hot aisle, cold aisle technology or strategy. Let's understand this, that this strategy is used to decide the airflow in the room, and airflow should be such that the energy spent to the room should be low. That means in first case scenario, the servers are lined up in an irregular fashion where hot side of the server is facing the cold side of the server. Similarly, other servers are kept in this fashion. To cool down all the aisles, there is a need of 4 cooling units. Whereas if these are lined up in a regular fashion where hot side of the servers is facing the hot side of the server and cold side of the server is facing the cold side of the server, there are only 3 aisles which are having the hot side of the servers. That means only 3 cooling units are required. In this way, we could conserve the energy as well as the cost. One more most effective process of cooling is immersion technology, immersion cooling, which is also known as direct liquid cooling. This can be divided into 2 parts. One is single phase and another is 2 phase. Single phase immersion cooling is something where your servers are dipped or immersed into a tank which is filled with dielectric liquid. This dielectric liquid is recycled back to the tank by the heat recovery of this particular liquid. It absorbs the energy from the servers and translate it into the form of sensible heat. But in two-phase process, as the liquid reaches its boiling point, it starts boiling and starts generating the vapors. Now, because involvement of vapor is there, along with sensible heat, latent heat involvement is also there, and thus the heat transfer coefficients increase. This vapor goes back to the condenser and comes in the liquid form back to the tank. This is one of the most effective ways of cooling the data centers, and it is now being implemented widely in the data center industry. One concept that ties them up together, all the previous steps, which is heat recovery or heat rejection. If this is not there, your heating and cooling demands are going to be huge, which we cannot afford. So therefore, the various technology or various equipments are used to recover the heat which is coming in from the data centers. These equipments are rotary thermal wheel, plate heat exchangers, dry coolers, heat pipe, or phase change materials. These equipments can reduce the overall requirement of energy up to 60%, and the exhaust fluid which is coming in can be used as the heat source or heat sink. It overall improves the energy efficiency of the process. In this webinar, we are mostly going to talk about the dry coolers in one of our case studies. Now, moving towards the modeling part, which is electrical room HVAC modeling. This case study we have done for one of our clients, which is world's largest social media company. With our help, we help them in thermal assessment and heat rejection of most of their cooling units. They also wanted to know what should be the particular location of the cooling units and which cooling unit needs to be used. So Paanduv helped them in deciding which cooling unit should go where. And apart from that, the parametric optimization was also the part of the study. Compiling all these studies, they could take better decisions in their upcoming data centers and upcoming data farm designs, and overall cost could be saved significantly. As I said, Paanduv application did this particular case for world's largest social media company, and these solutions provided to them are actually being implemented in the real world. The problem statement for this particular case study is reducing the overall temperature of the electrical room and minimizing the temperature of the inlet in the cooling unit. The objectives of this case study is choice of the cooling unit, whether should they go for ARU or CRA, placement of the cooling unit, whether the configuration should be frontal or longitudinal, and the third case is optimal utility of the units, whether the unit should run at peak load, that is highest maximum efficiency, or it should run at the lower efficiency, that is 50%. This is the existing room design. There are 4 data UPS which are kept in line. 2 of them are not working. UPS 01 and 02 are only functional at the moment. There are 2 units at the moment. ARU units are kept. ARU 1 is the first ARU and ARU 2 is the second ARU. As you can see that the room is not symmetrical. That means if one of the unit fails, the results for one unit cannot be replicated to the other. Going ahead with this much information, we also help them in optimizing the scenario that which should be the ARU placement. At the moment, ARU is placed in a frontal configuration where the outlet of the from the ARU, the cold air outlet from the ARU goes directly to the non-working data center or data center or the servers, whereas in the longitudinal manner, the cold air goes to the aisle. In another case, what if ARU1 is not functional and only ARU2 is functional at 100% efficiency? Similarly, if ARU2 fails and only ARU2 is working at 100% efficiency, or in the third case, when ARU1 and ARU2 both are functional at 50-50% functionality, what should be the thermal effects and how the thermal profiles look like? These were the problems before us, and I have summarized some of the best results in this slide. Although there was no significant difference in all the scenarios, but the existing layout showed that scenario B, where only ARU1 is functional at 100%, showed the best results. In new layout, which is where the ARU are kept at the configuration where the cold air is coming to the aisles, showed the best results. In the volume plot, we can see there is a clear stratification of the hot air and cold air. Hot air exists at the top and cold air exists at the bottom. Similarly, the case study we have done for this, an optimized case study from here, is further studied and compared to the CRA results. Now, the results obtained from the first configuration, which is side-by-side arrangement, is compared to the results where ARU units are replaced by the CRA units. Now, the difference between ARU and CRA units is that the cold air inlets are at the bottom in case of CRA units, and cold air inlets in case of ARU are at the top. And as the warmer air has a tendency to go upward due to the buoyancy effect, it is wise that the exhaust of the hot air is at the top. That means CRA units are more favorable in this case. And we have summarized the results in this slide that CRA unit, where first and second CRA units are functional at 50-50%, showed us the best results. And as you can see in the slices, these slices are cut at different heights of the room. And at the bottom of the slice, most regions are blue. That means it is on the colder side and the colder temperatures are around 80°F. There are some dead zones nearby the servers. At the top of the room, which is the third slice, the temperature is around 101°F. In the previous case, the highest temperature was around 148°F. But right now, the maximum temperature of the room is around 111.7°F, which is already 35 degrees lower. That means CRA units are functional in a very successful manner, and the average temperature of the room is around 89.5°F. Summarizing some results, new layout, which is side-by-side arrangement of ARU, showed us the best activity, which is the temperature around UPS 2 was 110°F, whereas when the unit was replaced by CRA unit, this temperature was around 80.8°F. The physics captured in this study was turbulence, conjugate heat transfer, and buoyancy effect. Now, in this first case where ARU was functional, the second case showed us the best activity, whereas in case of CRA, the third case, which is when the CRA units are functional at 50-50%, showed us the best activity, showed us the best results or lowest temperatures. That's happening because of the location of the cold air inlet and hot air inlet. Similarly, in this ARU case, the location of the inlet and outlet are reversed. That's why the CRA gave us the better temperatures for the whole case study for the electric room. Now, some of the computational modeling tips here. If you have perforated tiles in your room, you can use the porous media concept. Porous media concept gives you the liberty to use Darcy-Forsheimer equation, from which you can get the D and F coefficients, and you can very well put together a case study using that. If you have relative humidity in your system, you can use the density modification, because once there is hydration in the air, density will definitely change, and that modification you can make in the density in your case. When you have a fan coil assembly, you can use the porous media. You can fit the experimental data using the using the curve fitting, and then get the D and F coefficient and do the same strategy again to demonstrate this case. If you have servers, then you can use the heat source for them. If it is a constant heat source, you can very well put together a constant heat source. But if it is a time varying heat source, you can put a function to solve this case. Now moving towards the fourth section of the webinar, which is environmental modeling for large scale data farms. These are some of the data farms which are located in urban areas, which are somewhere in California, somewhere in Las Vegas, somewhere in Canada. Why there is a need to model data farm? These are big areas where lot of data center buildings are kept. Then why there is a need to model that? These data farms are modeled to find the most effective way of heat rejection. If you are using dry coolers as the heat rejection mode, then arrangement of these dry coolers and elevation of these dry coolers becomes the matter of concern, and people use to model these parameters aggressively. The choice of dry coolers, because dry coolers come in different configuration, and different dry coolers give the different efficiency. So choice of dry cooler also becomes a matter of concern. Effect of ambient condition of that particular area where your data center is located, the wind speed, the wind direction, and the local temperature becomes very important in deciding the movement of the heat. Heat island effect, which I'll be describing in the upcoming slide, is also needs to be deduced through this data farm modeling. In this case study, we are going to focus more on the fourth and fifth part of this flowchart. What is heat island effect? And most importantly, this is urban heat island effect. This occurs when a city experiences much warmer temperatures than the rural areas. And why this happens? Because the surfaces of the surfaces of the city are the pavements, or such that it absorbs more heat and retains the heat for a longer time, and does not allow it to go quickly. So in the schematic which is represented here, you can see that around the city areas, the temperatures are much higher than the rural areas. And elimination of such heat island effects become very important, because if there is a generation of hot plume in the surrounding city, it becomes a matter of concern for the humankind, and from the perspective of global warming and climate change. The difficulty in this particular problem is designing an optimal dry cooler arrangement for maximum cooling efficiency. The objective that was given to us was to analyze the effect of wind speed, wind direction, and local temperature on the airflow from the dry coolers for a particular arrangement of dry cooler. Here we have not changed the arrangement of dry coolers. This is the computational domain where the wind is coming from the south direction, and there are two data center buildings which are named as DCB1 and DCB2. There is an administrative block which is ADM. Dry coolers are arranged in a chunk of two chunk of dry coolers in different rows, and chillers are around them. The dry coolers are in conical form. The hot air is going into the environment from the top, and the hot ambient air is coming in to the dry coolers from the conical section. The right hand side image shows the isometric view of this particular computational domain. Now, summarizing this particular slide, we can see that the results are demonstrated for three different wind speeds, which is 5 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour, and 25 miles per hour. For 5 miles per hour, there are clearly visible two heat island effects, which are going to be there for a long time, and the wind speed is unable to move this hot plume, and thus there are two hot heat island effects created. Similarly, for 15 mph, the wind is unable to move the whole heat towards the city side, and there is one heat island effect created there. Whereas for 25 miles per hour, the wind is capable enough to carry the whole heat along with it, and there is complete dissipation of the heat in the surrounding areas. We have plotted temperature with respect to the height of the computational domain, and we can see that for 5 miles per hour and 15 miles per hour, the temperature does not change with the height of the computational domain. But for 25 miles per hour, the temperature continuously reduces as the height increases. I think from the previous case studies, we understood that there is an immense need of computational modeling in data center industry. And this is a viable way to do so, because experimental studies can be really hectic, and in this case can be really capex intensive. Moving towards the greener approach for data center, because the traditional practices for data centers are consuming lot of energy, as well as it is emitting lot of carbon dioxide in the environment. So greener practices for the data centers are always good to have. Now the question is how to go green about data centers. First of all, we should know that what is the power usage effectiveness of your data center. The lower the power usage effectiveness, that is PUE, the better condition you are in with respect to the data centers. You can also implement the concept of green storage, which is a practice using the variety of clean energy storage methods and products to cut down the data center's carbon footprint as well as the cost. In previous case, in the quiz that I had conducted in the first slide, I had showed you 8 data centers, and out of those 8 data centers, most of them are using some renewable energy sources to drive them. These can be the ocean power, the wave energy, the wind energy, or the glacial power to cool down the overall heat. These ways are a good initiative for the data center greener approach. To demonstrate one of the case study by Microsoft Project Netic, we have conducted our own internal case study for that. This right-hand side image shows the pod which was deployed in the North Sea, 117-meter deep into the sea for 2 years. This sealed vessel is filled with nitrogen, and there are a couple of heat exchangers, servers, 12 racks of servers are there. And through the analysis, it is proven that underwater data centers are more reliable, sustainable, and practical, and the PUE was much lower than the traditional land data centers. The left-hand side are the images that we have taken from the website of Microsoft Project Netic website. And the right-hand side are the images that we have created internally by ray tracing method. You can wonder that the similarity is quite good. The left-hand side images have the servers, heat exchangers, and the fans, so as our images. And it is covered by the casing, which is the pod itself, the sealed pod, and there is nitrogen inside it because nitrogen is less corrosive. We had applied some complex meshing technology, meshing strategies to actually capture the physics which is going on in the system. These heat exchangers are quite complicated in shape, and that's why more refinement was needed to capture the physics over here. The physics that was implemented in the setup was buoyancy effect, convection, conduction, conjugate heat transfer, and pressure velocity coupling. You can see due to the servers which is evolving heat over the period of time, the nitrogen which is surrounding the servers are getting heated up, and due to the buoyancy effect, it is going to the upward direction, losing that heat, and when it is getting colder, it is coming down to the bottom, and in this way a circulation recirculation loop is created over here. Since the servers are evolving heat and the heat exchangers surrounding it are able to cool it, we can see that there is a color difference in the temperatures, and you can see a clear indication of heat transfer happening here. Now, some of the major concepts in terms of energy and some of the statistics which represent the data center industry, which is 1% of the global energy consumption is done by data center industry, and it is going to be around 13% in 2030. It is projected to be 13%. Right now, 360 million tons of CO2 is generated per year at present, and it is expected to be in billions of tons of CO2 in 2030. Chillers account for 40% of the total energy used in the data center, and through the green technologies, through the greener practice, one can reduce the total requirement of cooling by 70% and can save up to 100 tons of CO2. There are some passive cooling technologies which are coming in, which are retrofitted, which are really effective in terms of data center cooling. Coming on to the last section of the webinar, which is CFD and AI based expert system for data center exclusively developed by Paanduv applications. Let's understand this problem in a way. Let's take the previous example of dry coolers in this case study. For one arrangement of dry cooler, we had done CFD from the scratch and we had come up with the outcomes. Similarly, 300 cases were run and CFD data was available for 300 other cases. Now, if I want to have the 301st scenario where my dry coolers are arranged in a different fashion, should I do the CFD again from scratch? Should I predict the outcome of a new scenario from the scratch using CFD that can be really unnecessary or unreasonably cost and time consuming? So is there a quick and cost effective reliable alternate to CFD which can predict the real accurate outcomes? The proposed solution here is either one can use the CFD from scratch, but that can be accurate, relatively slow, and it will be resource intensive, but it will give you the accurate results. One can use only AI with the real world measurements. It can be highly resource intensive, but it can be accurate at the same time. But the Paanduv that we have implemented in our software proposed a solution that is CFD and AI based expert system. It will be reasonably accurate, it is fast, it is cost effective, and it utilizes the existing CFD data to predict the other scenarios. The workflow of this problem states that the engineer who is sitting somewhere struggling with the scenario number 301 will input all the details in our software, and within a fraction of second, it will deduce the prediction of 301 scenario. Now this prediction is favorable or not, that he will decide. And this CFD and AI based expert system, which is a software, is wrapped by Paanduv applications, which provides the end-to-end workflow to the engineer. Now there is a myth going around that the neurons cannot get trained, but do neural nets learn from data center data? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have trained it and we have showed it in this slide that as the AI complexity is increased, the accuracy improves further up to a certain range. In this workflow, the data center engineer is inputting all the required scenario which is required for the new data center design in the software, and this interface or this software predicts the performance and efficiency of the proposed scenario. This software provides an end-to-end advanced CFD and AI solution to the data center industry. Through all these case studies, we can understand that Paanduv application is doing a detailed study on CFD AI based data center modeling. And for such solutions, you can always contact us. You can always reach out to us at support@paanduv.com. If you have any query about the webinar, if you want to contact us for any project, we always welcome you to write us at support@paanduv.com. I will give you some time for you to write some questions in the chat box. Either I or my team will answer those questions. Thank you all for your time. Uh, let's see you soon in our upcoming webinars or upcoming events.